From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano joined by Giana Han for a special episode here to give you a behind-the-curtain look at some of the disconnects behind the Ravens 1-5 start, some of the trouble brewing under the surface in a new story that Giana has written for thebanner.com. We'll tell you what's really going on with the Ravens offense. All that and much, much more. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Giana, thanks for joining the Banner Ravens podcast.
Thanks for having me without Jonas.
Without Jonas. It's been a while since it's just been you and me. Sometimes it's you and Jonas.
So nice without Jonas. No, I'm kidding.
Please, he listens to every episode, so he's got rabbit ears. We are here to talk about a new story that you've written for thebanner.com where people can read and subscribe $1 for 6 months. The Ravens are 1-5 as they enter this critical matchup against the Chicago Bears coming out of the bye. And a lot of the focus this season, understandably, has been about the defense because they are last in the NFL in points per game allowed. But this story focuses more on the offensive struggles that the Ravens have had. And you spoke to sources in and around the castle about this. This offense was historically good last year. 2 years ago, Lamar Jackson won the MVP. Last year, he could have won the MVP. Probably should have. Last year, they were the first team ever to throw for 4,000 yards, to run for 3,000. They were first in yards per play, first in yards per game, first in red zone rate. And so far this season, through 6 games, they're still 15th in points per game. So right in the middle of the pack, despite the fact that they've been without Lamar Jackson for 2 games and a quarter. They averaged 35 points per game in the 3 games that Lamar Jackson started and finished, but they're trending downwards. They've scored fewer and fewer offensive points each week since that 40-point outburst in week 1. And head coach John Harbaugh has been publicly pretty critical of the offense when asked about what exactly is going wrong with everything on that side of the football.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's so obvious that the defense is a problem, right? And this article is not denying that, even though it's focusing on the offense. It's important that players mention it's a whole team issue. However, as John Harbaugh is vehemently defending Zach Orr and all the players, are putting themselves on the line to defend Zach Orr, I started wondering, why aren't guys stepping up about Todd Monken when John Harbaugh is straight up calling him out in the play calling? And there was a straight up call out, and then there were also some allusions to he wasn't happy with plays. So, started hearing murmurings in and around about why that was. And then, of course, our friendly rivals on the other side of the city, the Baltimore Sun, came out with something hinting that there was something wrong on the offensive side of the ball. So I started really digging in, trying to pinpoint things. So that's where this all came about. And we found that there's some more X's and O's problems, and then there's some more chemistry problems.
Yeah, let's talk about the X's and O's problems first, because in this story, you talk about how some sources inside the castle have concerns that Todd Monken has a game plan for every week, as every offensive coordinator does, but he deviates from that game plan too early in games. And some people would say, well, you deviate early if you are losing when you're not expecting to, and you have to throw your way back in, or you have to alter your game plan if things aren't working. But it's happening earlier, and it's happening at a time before the Ravens are even losing in games, before they are even going down in games. Is that something that you feel like you've heard several times from sources?
I will say that basically everything that's in this has multiple verifications, because I'm very aware that there are different personalities on the team. Everyone has their own agenda, right? Because they're their own business. They all have their own contracts. So I did confirm everything multiple times. And one, I would say, challenge here is that basically everyone on this team has only played for the Ravens, right? And clearly will not be like alluding to who or what, but I would say that people on other teams might be more used to having to deviate from a game plan, right? Because the last 2 years, the Ravens were almost never behind. I believe Jonas did a story about that one year about how they were only trailing for like less than a quarter total across the whole season.
Yeah.
So that's the definition of things are going to plan.
Right.
Right. However, as you mentioned, this is happening earlier than they expected. They mentioned that defense will get a big stop. They think they know what's going on, and they'll be either expecting certain plays or and it doesn't happen, or the play call that happens, they're like, this isn't what we practice in this situation. So lots of people have been asking, because they all say, coaches and players, we're practicing hard, we're executing well. And everyone asks, well, why isn't that carrying the games? And the on TV answer is, we don't know. If we knew, we would solve it.
Right.
Whereas some people are starting to feel like the actual answer is because this isn't what they practice. They're not prepared for it. And obviously there's also the whole element of this offense was made for Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
And in past years, the backups have also been not Lamar Jackson, but like Lamar Jackson. And now, whatever your feelings on Cooper Rush, no one can say he's the same style player. So now they're adjusting to that on top of everything. But they certainly have felt like a little bit off balance, because this is not something that Todd has done other than, and they've lost in the past. I will also add that they have lost in the past, and he hasn't done that to what they're saying or what they feel. And they feel like this is out of character.
Yeah. It's certainly a team that has had a ton of success with the players in the building. I mean, Marlon Humphrey said the other day, he's not used to being a loser and he doesn't like being a loser. This is a team that under John Harbaugh and with Lamar Jackson at quarterback have been a very, very successful team. And this is the first time we've seen them experience the kind of road bump that they have so far. I mean, last year, obviously, they start out 0-2, but they fixed their problems pretty quickly. One of the sources that you quote in this story, the feeling in the locker room is, what the F, we're 1-5. And that's kind of the sense that we've gotten as well from the team, is that they feel a little bit shell-shocked. Talk about being characteristic or uncharacteristic for Todd Monken. Why do you think the players specifically, some of them, feel a little bit let down by the offensive schemes changing uncharacteristically?
Well, I think part of it is that they always expected one thing, right? But the other part is that there's so many good players on this team. Yeah, they don't have Lamar Jackson, and everyone says the ship rises and sinks with Lamar Jackson. However, let's be real. They have so many other Pro Bowlers, right? They should be able to make something happen without him. I've heard this example so many times from sources, the 49ers, when they were super, super injured, they were down, and they still made something happen. And they surprised the Rams. And this is why I heard it a lot, is because it was before the Rams game. They upset the Rams. And they're like, well, if they can do it, why can't we? We have Pro Bowlers up and down this roster. We have the talent. I know fans are just coming at the offensive line. That's probably the only thing on offense that fans are really, really getting at. The players, no one called out the offensive line because they were like, it's only one person who's changed. And they don't think that one person is bad. And they're not saying that everyone's perfect, but they did see this group, minus Patrick McCary, do this all last year.
Yeah.
So they have faith that they can do it again this year. So this just doesn't make sense to them.
Yeah. No, the talent is certainly there.
Yes.
Obviously, Lamar Jackson is an MVP caliber quarterback, but taking him out of the offense shouldn't result in a 3-point game in a loss against the Rams. And we've also seen Cooper Rush be successful in previous seasons, obviously with the Dallas Cowboys, had a winning record, had a positive touchdown to interception ratio, comes to Baltimore, and he has not had that kind of success and gets benched in the fourth quarter for Tyler Huntley. 3 things stuck out to me, Gianna, in what you heard from sources. One, some players took issue with the rhythm and timing of Todd Monken's calls. 2, they talked about how perhaps Todd Monken has overcomplicated his approach as he's tried to get the ball to as many playmakers as he can. And the third thing is, at the same time, some of these players feel the offense has been too predictable. Let's start with the rhythm and timing first. What exactly does that mean when players talk about them not liking or being dissatisfied with the rhythm and timing of Todd Monken's play calls? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think this was kind of a pushback to reports that creativity was the problem. While there are some people that think it could be more creative, everyone agreed it was more about when the plays were called and what plays were called. It's not that they don't have the players or the plays in that playbook for those situations. It's that when they get in those situations, let me phrase it this way. Second, third, fourth, and one. They were confident in their ability as a team, as an offense to score. They had the players and they have the plays.
Right, down by the goal line.
Yet, and this is in the last game against the Rams, yet when the plays were called, they weren't confident in the plays. It wasn't they weren't confident in themselves. They weren't confident that this team can do it. It was that they weren't confident in the plays. Now, let's also add, of course, that the O-line called itself out, right? Because they felt that they didn't generate enough push. So and all the players have said, this is not just Todd Monken. They have their own fault for the execution, right? But it's also comprehensive. It's all things. It's defense, it's special teams, it's offense, it's players, it's coaches, it's everything. But this is one of the things that they feel could get better. Another example, the fourth downs against the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, all these have a little asterisk, right? Because there were 4 fourth downs attempts. Only one of them was by Lamar. The one that was converted was by Cooper Rush. There was a confusing one where Justice Hill looked like he was going to go block, and then he ran a route, but then they threw it nowhere near him. But the more confusing one that I found was there was one fourth down attempt where Justice Hill was lined up out wide and Rashad Bateman was in the backfield. And if any of our readers or listeners follow Jonas Schaefer, he's a X's and O's guru beyond what I can be, but he was like, wait, that's really weird. So then I was like, okay, my gut feeling was right. So it's just not that they don't have creativity. Clearly they do. It's worked. There is an element that maybe people are catching on to the creativity and you can keep evolving because there are other offenses that stay good beyond just 2 years of being brand new and shiny and mysterious and haven't been figured out yet. But it's just, I think the timing goes back to a little bit of that game plan, right? They expect to do one thing and then they're doing something else.
Yeah.
And maybe they practice it, maybe they haven't, maybe they can execute it, but it's just not right for that moment.
Yeah, and that example of Rashad Bateman being in the backfield kind of smacks of the overcomplication that you mentioned as well.
Yes.
Because you have all these toys on offense, so to speak, all these weapons. You brought in DeAndre Hopkins this year. You still have Rashad Bateman. You have Zay Flowers coming off a Pro Bowl season. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely is now fully healthy. Obviously, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, an insane amount of mouths to feed. But maybe that bevy of options has led Todd Monken to overcomplicate things.
Everyone's been asking, literally since they added DeAndre Hopkins, because I was like, okay, this roster's already loaded, and now you're adding this future Hall of Famer, right? And so they're asking, is there such a thing as too many mouths to feed, this effort to get everyone the ball? And I think a lot of times that question is taken as, are people going to be upset that they're not getting the ball? And so everyone's always said, no, there's no such, we don't have egos. They're not clashing. And we've heard that in the past too. And I think DeAndre Hopkins is the type of guy that also would fit in with that. He's not going to be out here you should give me the ball and not Zay Flowers or something like that. However, if you dive deeper, maybe there is a problem in that you can't get all those stars the ball. But you're trying to.
Right.
Not that the stars are mad, but that the people who are making the decisions want to get it to all of them, right? They, like you said, they have shiny toys and they want to use all of them. So they said there's a lot of in and out instead of just, building momentum. They're just complicating things. And I do feel like maybe last season, just from my own personal observation, we saw something different than this year where it would be like one guy's game, right? Like you would have Isaiah Likely pops off game. You would have the Keaton Mitchell game, which is why I don't recommend drafting Ravens, not because they're not good, but because you never knew who was going to be the guy.
Football,
yes, in fantasy football. Obviously you have to draft players, but yes, in fantasy football. And so I feel like we haven't seen that this season.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
like,
and certainly the last couple of weeks with Cooper Rush under center, a lot of the wide receivers production has been struggling. I mean, Rashad Bateman, I think, has 2 catches in the last 3 games. So it's something that we saw a ton last year was it would be Derrick Henry's time to feed, or it would be Rashad Bateman's time to go off. And it just has not been that way.
Yeah. And like, obviously Derrick Henry is going to be a staple, right? But there are ways to mix things in, and there are ways to ride the guy who has some momentum, you know? And I just thought last year, like, Monken had such a good feel for that, it felt like. And then this year, it just feels forced. And according to sources, well, like, people are just coming in and out, and there's just no rhythm to it. And they're trying to get everyone the ball, and then no one's getting the ball.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just becoming too complicated.
Exactly. And then the third point, which is probably the hardest one to diagnose, and it takes a lot of self-scouting, but some of the sources that you talked about the Ravens offense being too predictable. And that's something that even we can notice at times from the press box is certain situations, certain down and distances. If they have Justice Hill in the game and not Derrick Henry, they're probably going to be throwing the ball because that's Justice Hill's spot when he has the ability to catch a pass out of the backfield, and they like his pass blocking. But it goes beyond that too. And it's something that now Todd Monken, in his 3rd season as the offensive coordinator, maybe some of the defenses are starting to notice these trends.
So they use the word tendencies. And we've heard it in the press conferences, and they really are hearing it behind the scenes. And on one hand, John Harbaugh mentioned he was really glad to see them breaking tendencies, right? But then in like the next question or so in the same press conference, he said he doesn't consider a true tendency unless you have 80% or more of your snaps at that specific type of play. And Jonas went and looked, and no one, even Justice Hill, doesn't have that with, passing downs. So publicly, they say they're not concerned. Todd Monken was asked about it yesterday because of what I'd been told, and he said he wasn't concerned. However, and if you're not concerned, you're not concerned. However, it doesn't jive with what they're hearing behind the scenes. People use the word, they're harping on it. And they said they got back from the bye, and that is a big focus. They started adjusting beforehand. That's been a big focus. Apparently, Harbaugh's been asking why, okay, this guy is always on for this type of play, but can't anyone else fill in there? Maybe we're less exposing. And this is where sources outside of the building are also helpful, because people on different teams also say they all know. And sorry to I'm not jumping on Justice Hill, but he is an example. Like, they all know if Justice Hill is on the field, that it's going to be a pass for the most part. And again, Monken said, over the years, you're going to develop tendencies, especially if you're a good team. But I do feel like we saw more runs from Justice last year. And it's just been a lot of those, in the backfield passes, a lot of pass blocking. And it's, again, the word predictable. It's becoming just a little bit stale. And so to their credit, they know this. Even if they're not publicly acknowledging it, they know it and they're working on it.
Yeah.
But, normally we want to report game plan type stuff. However, the whole point of this is that they were exposing their own game plan, and now they're trying not to expose their game plan.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just even other people outside the building are realizing it. It's not saying media is, but other people from teams.
Yeah.
So.
And I think Ravens fans would hope that a bye week would give the Ravens coaches the opportunity to self-scout and realize the kind of tendencies that they have built up over time and try to break those tendencies. But I also know a lot of fans are probably listening to this and saying, why is there so much attention being paid to the offense right now when the defense is literally last in the league in points per game allowed? But Gianna, your sources were careful to not pin this 1-5 start on one side of the ball in particular. They acknowledged that both sides of the ball deserves blame for the 1-5 start. But it also seems like, based on what you've been told, Zach Orr's approach seems to go better with players, seems to relate to players better than Todd Monken's approach. Why do you think that is?
Some of it's going to be natural, right? Zach Orr was a player, and not only was he a player, he was a Raven not that long ago. He played alongside some of these guys. And so I think, you know, fans don't like hearing this defense of Zach Orr, but guys just love him so much, and we cannot deny that. Now, is that clouding whether like they know if he's good or not? Maybe. On the offensive side, they're not working with him as much, but they're still defending him to me. And they do say like there are some things that he does that maybe don't make a lot of sense, but they also are saying it's their defensive counterparts execution that's letting Zach Orr down. And that's something I'm hearing outside the building as well too. And so we don't ask the offensive players about Zach Orr in press conferences, right? That doesn't make sense. But that is, like I said, what kind of started these conversations was because you see Kyle Hamilton so adamant about Zach Orr. He's putting himself out there for him, accidentally trips over his words, maybe doesn't use the best description for Ravens fans. And he, to his credit, apologized for it. But to me, that when he said that, it didn't surprise me because
the spoiled comment.
Yeah, the spoiled comment. It didn't surprise me because this is something he gets really passionate about, right? Like he loves his defensive coordinator. And so, Todd Monken is older and he did play at a certain level, but he didn't play for the Ravens, definitely. And as Jonas pointed out, he's more moved literally because he's in the booth calling plays. He's not on the sidelines with them. And guys respect him. They have to. He's done like made a lot of history with them. And they're not saying like he should be fired or anything, but when things start to, not go to plan, cracks maybe start to show, and they don't have that fire to take the initiative like Hamilton did and defend this man. Like if you ask them straight up on the record, they'll be like, yeah, like we trust in him, but it's not like this is our guy. You guys are spoiled for, and so there's just a little bit of a disconnect. And again, there are a lot of personalities on the team, and some of them are fine. Some of them maybe don't love him, but can just have a working relationship. But there have been clashes, past and present, which was confirmed by multiple sources. So there's certainly, we see a bit of it. We know he's a tough love guy, right? And we see he doesn't always have the cleanest interviews. Maybe the Ravens PR has to ellipses some of the words that he uses, but that takes another level behind the scenes, I think, when the cameras aren't on, the recorders aren't recording, and some players are fine with it. Some players say they've had worse. But other players see like that only works if they feel a connection beneath it.
Sure.
And they don't have that connection.
Yeah.
They don't get the sense, and he might rebuttal this. We were not given the chance to really ask him, but they don't feel like he truly cares about them. I think sometimes when you hear about tough love coaches, that love part is really important.
Yeah.
Right? I think about, I don't know, some high school coaches I've interviewed where they're yelling, am I allowed to curse? Yelling their asses off at these players, but they're also doing it because they love these players and they want them to make it to college and they want them to have a good success. And so these players, some of them, are really responding to that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, there's some truth to this and there's some not. I see what the point, but some people say like at the NFL level, tough love isn't necessarily what's needed.
Gotcha.
Because you got here, you clearly had a certain level of like understanding and discipline, and you understand the game, even if you can't always do it. Like, you know what you did wrong. So it's not always well received. And I think losses, as we said, bring this out a little bit more. I think if everything's going well, it's hard to say that, but now they're 1-5.
Exactly. And some of those clashes that you mentioned that Todd Monken has had behind the scenes, according to your sources, some have stormed out of meetings midway through with Todd Monken. So clearly there is stuff that is simmering beneath the surface, but also some of your sources indicate that when you're 1-5, tensions rise. Everybody is at a heightened level of frustration. And sometimes that boils over in ways that they wouldn't if, they were still having problems, but they were 3-2 or 3-3 or whatever they were. When Todd Monken was asked by you yesterday whether he feels the difficulties of this season have tested the relationships with other coaches or players, He said, quote, "No, not at all. I don't see it that way. Coach Harbaugh has set an unbelievable culture of confronting everything that gets in the way of winning football. We're frustrated, but we're not deterred. I love our energy this week. We're fired up. We're ready to go. We've had a couple of great practices. Looking forward to seeing how it turns out Sunday, but I don't feel that way," end quote. So Todd Monken specifically addressing that idea that there could be cracks underneath the surface culture-wise. But it's also something that the bye week has afforded us the opportunity to talk to some of the lower level assistants. Offensive line coach George Warhop spoke with the media. He kind of indicated that when asked about the struggles in the run game, that the issues in his mind are less about an inability to run the ball and more about the Ravens choosing in their game plan not to focus on the run. He said, we've run the ball well when we've focused on it and when we've dedicated ourselves to it, but there are issues when we're not running the ball consistently. And that's also something that we heard from quarterbacks coach T. Martin talking about the sacks that his quarterbacks have taken, not just Lamar Jackson, but Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley as well, is that he has to work within the framework of the game plan and the play calls that are set out for him. And that, of course, comes back to Todd Monken. So we're hearing from some of the assistants, they're not coming out and criticizing anybody. They're not criticizing Todd Monken publicly. But in their subtle ways, we're hearing about some frustrations that are perhaps happening underneath Todd Monken and his own staff.
I think the part from George Warhop that really stuck out to me was just a little bit the tone and emphasis. He said, we can run the ball. We're just not running the ball. That's not a direct quote, but that's like the emphasis that he gave. And I know like maybe people will say we're taking it one way or the other, but the whole group of us walked out and we're like, wow, that was a pretty strong statement. Or strong emphasis.
Sure. Then certainly he wants to feel like he can run the ball, like he's not doing anything wrong and that his group is performing well. So certainly he's going to come to the defense of his own unit, but
his unit is also beleaguered and maybe hasn't executed as we were expecting. But again, I will say that the other players say that they're not concerned about that position group. So that seems to be consistent beyond just what he's saying, beyond him just trying to defend his guys.
Exactly. Interesting. All right. We are going to take one more quick break before we wrap up this special edition Friday podcast.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time.
All right, Gianna, one more element of this story that we should discuss. There was a specific quote from one of your sources who said, quote, "We let our reputation get to our heads," end quote. And this is something we talked about off the top. The Ravens have been excellent under John Harbaugh and specifically with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. But that's something that I think from the outside you can naturally speculate at is this team too obsessed with their own success from the last couple of years that once they got punched in the mouth, they weren't able to punch back. How do you feel like players have taken that approach or encapsulated it?
I think that that's honestly quote we could attribute to almost any of them. I think that's agreed upon. I think it could be something that maybe some would actually say on record. The thing is, to quote a former Penn State a coach, the mentality is 1-0, right? That's all they're ever going to say is that they're focused on the next game. But the problem is, and this is what they probably wouldn't want to admit, the mentality hasn't been 1-0. It's been 1-5. It's been focused on the past and not the future. They came in with so much hype and they don't listen to that hype, but it still gets through, right? Most of these guys are on social media. Most of them are being asked by us questions that at least let them know what's going on in the outside world. They talk, the coaches talk, etc. So they came in, expecting we're this feared offense. And of course the defense got so much hype and we're talking big talk about wanting to put fear into their opponents. And they come out and look like soft butter just being sliced by a butter knife. And I should say on the defense, because the offense came out strong. But it just, started spiraling to the point where sources say that the 1-5 record was mentioned coaches, players every day, every single day. It was something they just couldn't get out of their head. And we
Right.
do see that there were some changes, at least on the defensive side in the Rams game. They played a lot better. And the offensive players made sure to shout that out. And I think that's where it really revealed how poorly the offense was playing, because they were so disappointed they weren't able to respond in that complimentary football way. So they did come back to a motivational speaker arranged by someone on the team called Eric Thomas. Of course, only one player actually knew who it was. This took me a lot of questions. And his whole thing was about focusing on the future. Don't focus. He used the 2011 New York Giants as an example. They went 9-7. They still won the Super Bowl. And he was saying, stop focusing on these 6 games. Focus on the last 11. Focus on what you can do in this last 11. And I did ask if that worked. They said, we'll see. Like, they think it has, but they'll see once they actually get onto the field on Sunday, because this whole thing that we've been talking about this whole time is that the practices have been good and it's just been the games. But yeah, so they acknowledge that is a really important part of this. As much as they're saying there are things that Monken's doing that's either uncharacteristic or rubbing them the wrong way, they think it's very important that this is on them as well. This is on them to have the right mentality and to not make mistakes in critical situations.
Yeah. I come back to the quote from Marlon Humphrey earlier this week. He said, "We are 1-5. We are 1-5. So we've won 1 game and lost 5 games." So there he's saying 3 times that they're 1-5.
So basically, the speaker didn't think clear to that. Maybe. But I think the other guys, I mean, Monken mentioned it, and I'm not disputing that. Like, that they did seem fired up. I mean, the locker rooms has seemed better. It's always a little hard because sometimes you can get the vibe that things are going well based on locker room that week, but sometimes you can be very surprised. So again, we shall see.
Yeah. Going to be an absolutely critical game on Sunday against the Chicago Bears, who have won 4 straight. Earlier in the week, Jonas Schaefer, Childs Walker, and I previewed that game. We gave our predictions as well. We're still sitting here on Friday not knowing the status of Lamar Jackson and whether he will be on the field Sunday. Obviously, Tyler Huntley, Cooper Rush could be in play if Lamar can't go. But later today, we will get some kind of status update on Lamar Jackson, and Giana has to run off to Ravens practice to go witness him. So Giana, thanks so much for hopping on here. Of course, everybody can read her great story on thebanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. Like, rate, review, subscribe. The Banner Ravens podcast, anywhere that you get it. At Giana_Jade is her handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Jonas and I will have another episode for